Hey, this is Mohal Joshi from Los Angeles, California. I follow Indian foreign policy and defense with a special focus on Asia. You can follow me on Twitter at Mohal Joshi.
Hey, this is Kishor from Bengaluru in India. I am an international relations expert specializing in global security, conflict resolution, and international negotiation. My focus areas include peace building and digital diplomacy. You can find me on Twitter at Veggie Diplomat. Hello and welcome to episode number 50 of India Rising Strategic Affairs Conversation with Mohal and Kishor, a show in which we analyze the happenings from around the world and their impact on India. Episode number 50 is quite a big milestone for us, and thank you, dear listeners, for staying with us all along. Today we have a packed episode. We want to look at Operation Sindoor and also how it panned out and the overall ramifications. So without wasting much time, let's begin. Operation Sindoor was a 4-day effort on the Indian side. The Pakistanis also retaliated. We all know about that. So it was an operation. We wouldn't want to call it a war, Mohal, and we would want to take the official version of it. We would just want to call it an operation. Now, this operation was just 4 days long, and it kind of kept spiraling and getting onto the escalation ladder quite quickly. So from almost every 4 to 6 hours, we were witnessing an escalatory ladder being taken, and I remember talking to Mohal earlier in the week, and we were quite skeptical on what to record simply because the facts on the ground were changing so quickly. So that was in fact the case where Operation Sindoor day to day was changing its entire feel. Okay, so let's look at how each day panned out. Day 1, in the early hours of May 7, India launched Operation Sindoor, quite a moniker, Mohal, a bold and calculated military response for the April 22nd Pahalgam terror attack, which we all know claimed the lives of 26 civilians, mostly tourists. We have covered it in our previous episode number 49. Now, the operation involved a deep strike, not only inside Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, POJK, but it also hit inside Pakistan. Now, this marked a significant shift in India's counter-terrorism doctrine. Now, there were reports of destruction of terror launchpads. India successfully destroyed 9 high-value terror launchpads linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, and not only their terror launchpads, terror training camps, but also their HQs as well. Now, these locations were identified as key training and operational hubs for attacks against India. Now, deep strikes into Pakistan's mainland was also quite significant because it broke conventional norms by targeting locations deep within the mainland, including strategic zones like the Punjab province, Bahawalpur in itself. Well, these were areas which were once considered untouchable. By doing so, India discarded the old distinction between terrorists and their state sponsors, treating both of them now as legitimate targets. This demonstrated not only to the Indian population, but also to the adversary, the Pakistanis, that no part of Pakistan would be considered safe if terror emanated from its soil. Mohal, so now this was the backdrop of day 1 and the quick one-line takeaway kind of thing from day 1 operations. Now, can you talk about the red line and how India asserted that red line, and then we can build on it step by step?
Yeah, thanks, Kishore. So, on the early morning hours of May 7th, India struck across 9 different sites, all the way from, as you can see on the map, Muzaffarabad in Pakistan occupied Kashmir to the north. Coming south, we have Kotli and Gulpur. Then we have Bimber. And so these are the 4 locations in, oh, sorry, and also,
No, those four.
uh,
Those
yeah,
four,
sorry, those 4 in Pakistan
POJK.
occupied Kashmir, and there were 5 in the Pakistan state of Punjab. So we have Chakamru, Sialkot, Muridke, and Bawalpur. So these was basically this signaled that there's a doctrinal shift in India's strategy, establishing that state-sponsored terrorism now would invite like targeted, visible, and proportional retaliation. I mean, if you remember the 2019 Balakot strikes, which were in response to the Pulwama bombing, the CRPF bombing of CRPF buses, that was a very limited single strike, and it also wasn't very visible. I mean, Pakistan made a huge hue and cry that only some crows and some trees were damaged, but there was no damage to the building, even though they didn't allow journalists to visit there for 40 days where they did all the repair work. But this was more a visible stuff. I mean, people on the streets in Pakistan, also with the advent of social media, they could not deny these attacks, and they were like way more visible.
Now, I would want to interject. Why are the Muridke and Bahawalpur important? And people generally get confused. Muridke is the headquarters of Lashkar-e-Toiba. Bahawalpur is the headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed. Mohal, please continue.
Yeah, and then many of these other locations, especially in the POK, like Muzaffarabad and Kotli and Gulpur and Bimber, they were like terrorist launch pads from where many of the attacks in the past, including I think even the Pulwama attacks, the terrorists have emanated from these camps. So they wanted to specifically target the terrorist launch pads in this POK locations.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, these was the situation on the early morning hours of May 7th. In the next few slides, I mean, we can see how the Muridke before and after pictures from Maxar, which is a satellite imaging company. So you can see that the buildings have been completely flattened, and same is the case for Bawalpur, where the before and after picture shows a different story. Now, especially like look at the bottom part of the Bawalpur, where the out of the 5, the 3 of the minarets, or at least I believe 2 of the minarets have been completely destroyed, and there are gaping holes in the roof of the structure.
Yeah.
And this is like something that even the Pakistanis couldn't deny, unlike the Balakot strike where there were more precision and surgical strikes. And interestingly, back then even the chief of air staff had mentioned that next time maybe we need to demolish a few buildings, because India was seen to be losing in the propaganda war against the
Correct.
Pakistanis, who said like nothing had happened. Anyways, so
And luckily this time around there was no cloud cover. So the satellite pictures were quite clear and crisp.
yeah, and also in the press briefing the next day, or actually the same day, the Indian Army did show drone footage, which means that India had assets inside Pakistan, which were able to relay pictures. Unlike the last time, where, as you said, the in Balakot, the drone pictures were not available. So there was clear-cut evidence, and this was given out in the press briefing. It was kind of interesting that Indian drones were able to penetrate the Pakistani air defenses and relay back this video back for like confirmation with Indian sources.
Right, right.
Anyways, so this was the situation in early morning on the 7th of May 2025. So now in response, Pakistan attempted to engage a large number of military targets all the way in from Kashmir to like Gujarat. Uh, Basically, they included places like Avantipura, Srinagar, Jammu, Coming down to Punjab, will be Pathankot, Amritsar, Kapurthala, Jalandhar, Ludhiana, Adhampur, Batinda, Chandigarh. Then in Rajasthan, we had like Palodi, Uttaralai, and like Bhuj in Gujarat. Now, these were all attacked using swarms of drones. Now, all of these or most of these were neutralized by India's counter UAS grid, and we'll go into the air defense part of in the later in the podcast.
Mhm.
So we had this mass swarm of drones which were launched all across the not only the international border but also the LOC with Pakistan.
Now, I'll just interject there for a bit. Now, India took about what 14, 15 days to retaliate after Pahalgam. Now,
Hmm.
mind you, in India there was a charade being played of a mock drill in the entire country on that day. So
Yeah.
there was that kind of a secrecy for the Operation Sindoor Day One attack. Now, Pakistan tried to counter-attack or tried to retaliate on the very same night. Now, I think this removed all sense of secrecy for Pakistan, simply because the Indians would have been on high alert that very night,
Hmm.
and somehow I think Pakistan missed the point there, and I think the only point of surprise there was that Pakistan directly attacked all places, including Bhuj in Gujarat and Rajasthan. Now, barring that, I think Indians would have been quite prepared for an incoming retaliation. And using drones and missiles, I think that was indicative of new age warfare. And yeah, we can talk about the defense system, but I think the Indians were up to the game on that night. Mohal,
Yeah,
please.
not only that, even there were reports that the some of the civilian airlines, airline traffic, commercial traffic wasn't shut down in sorry, the passenger traffic hadn't shut down in Pakistan, and they were using to launch missiles and drones under the guise of under the cover of the civilian air traffic. So in case if India responds and God forbid if a plane goes down, they could very well blame India for the disaster. So they were doing these drone attacks, and there was a mass, and there were like lot of reports of mass swarm of drones coming over the border, all across the border. Now, India was, as I said, like with the layered, multi-layered air defense, was able to knock down most of the drones. Interestingly, some of the reports said that only 1% of the drones were armed drones, and a lot of them were actually like those dummy, cheap drones. So India was luckily able to knock them down without much damage. But it looked, at least at that time, also tweeted that it looked like a probing attack to me,
Mm.
where for something much larger to come, and which did come later on, a couple of days later.
Yeah,
Anyways.
the technical term, sorry, I'm interrupting
Hmm.
again. The
Hmm.
technical term was that most of the drones did not have a warhead, and only
Hmm.
few of them had. But yeah, they were just to probe and figure out where the anti-missile systems were
Yeah,
located.
it's to figure out like where the air defense units are, kind of triangulate or send, if they can send the information back to Pakistan, then you can know the gaps in the air defense and the capabilities. So when you want a much larger strike with more potent weapons, missiles, planes, whatever it may be, you can have a good idea of where all the systems lie. So anyways, on the first day, uh what happened was, India, in response to the swarm drone attack, uh, targeted the military installations and the surveillance radar at Lahore and close to Gujranwala. So what India did was, India had this loitering munition, or the attack drone called Harap, which is like a Israeli-made drone, and it used to disable like a HQ-9 air defense system in heart of Lahore. And I think there were a lot of videos on social media and also on TV where they show a screaming drone like doing like a suicide dive on top of a system, and there was a large explosion later on.
Yeah, they
So
have
this
a they
was,
have a terminal acceleration. Yes.
Yeah. So they were the interesting is like Lahore is like at least like 25 kilometers from the border. So Indian drones were able to sneak in, be inside Pakistan, unknown to their air defenses, or maybe they were like jammed or something, and they were able to knock out these uh, a high-end air defense system such as the HQ-9 in the heart of Lahore. Okay, so that was the events of the 8th and ninth. So there was slowly a gradual, I think on the ninth, there was even a larger swarm of drones. Sorry, on the 8th, there's a larger swarm of drones coming over to India. And eventually, I think it escalated to a point where on the early morning hours of May 10th, Pakistan launched like a multi-vector attack along the western borders with not only UCAVs and like artillery, which they have been doing, but also there was um, a missile attack. I mean, it was the Fatah 1
Hmm.
missile, which was launched towards the NCR. So it was intercepted as per reports by the MR SAM, the India's like air defense missile, and this was a grave provocation because now not only those cheap drones were coming over and artillery attacks, but high-end like missiles uh, were coming over. I mean, Fatah 1 is not a ballistic missile, which is uh, uh, which is like the high end like you use for nuclear attacks. It is still in the conventional sense, but still like it's a multi rocket launcher system where you have, if you've seen the videos, like there are like multiple rockets firing. And I
Yeah.
think the Pakistanis were foolish enough to even like they were like shouting like slogans and while launching the rockets
Hmm.
towards
Hmm.
India. So this was a grave provocation which was uh, I mean, which could like push the war in a completely new direction. So what India decided, there was a decision that it would undertake a strike where it would hurt the Pakistani military. Up till now, mind you, like mostly, I mean, there have been some radar and air defense system which were targeted, but not military bases. So a bold decision was taken,
Hmm.
and they hit, I think, in the initial strike, like 8 air bases inside Pakistan, and like the primary ones were the Chaklala or the Noor Khan base, the Rafiki, Rahim Yar Khan, Sukur, Sargoda, Bolari, and Jacobabad were, I think, hit in the later strike, but initially 8 air bases were struck, which were like the heart of Pakistan, and also a couple of um, radar installations were targeted, and this was like a severe escalation on India's part. Now as per reports, like 15, I think, air launched version of the BrahMos missiles were launched, and I think the reports are hinting that it's the 222 squadron based out of Thanjavur, Tamil Nadu, but I think they must have been forward deployed
Yeah.
to launch this air launch. And BrahMos is like a supersonic Mark 3 missile, and I don't think Pakistan has anything in its inventory to intercept these supersonic missiles. And like it's a very potent missile, one of the best in the world, and it found the targets, and we have like lots of damage on the airfields. So if you see the uh, some of the pictures. So like the first picture is like from Shiv Arur, like he posted on X. Shiv Arur, the journalist at NDTV. So this is like a good square box where he shows the damage in like all the like at least 9 of the airfields, like Sukur, Sargoda, Bolari, Jacobabad, uh, Rahim Yar Khan, and Chunian Air Defense Radar. And like coming to more detailed pictures, so we have this pictures like from the Noor Khan base. Now, mind you, Noor Khan was a very significant hit because it's in the heart of Rawalpindi,
Rawalpindi.
very close to Islamabad, and I think the Pakistan Air Command sits there. It's also very close to GHQ. So this was like the center of air operations in Pakistan. So hitting hit was a big message that even, I mean, that was trying to take out the air operations. I mean, there have been some reports that if you see in the yellow rectangle on the left, there was some trailers where supposedly some drone operators were based, and maybe we took out some of the drone operators. I mean, it's all unconfirmed reports, so we don't know the truth yet. But nevertheless, there was significant damage in Nur Khan. Next one is the Rahim Yar Khan. So the Rahim Yar Khan, like they bombed the runways, and you can see clear like craters.
Yeah.
In this again, this images from Maxar. They were shared by journalist Vishnu Som from NDTV. So these were like very detailed images of the of the damage. Another interesting hit was in the next image. You see Bolari Air Base. So you see a hangar has been completely ripped open in the top right corner. And I think there was also reports that it has damaged the AVAX, like early warning aircraft inside the hangar. Uh, um, so you see like a significant damage on this. So we talked about Nur Khan. I think in Murid and Pasur and Chunian, like air defense radars were hit. So we were kind of trying to, Indian Air Force was trying to make them blind, that if there were like follow-up attacks, it would be harder for Pakistan to detect incoming planes and threats. Uh, and then Sargoda is like the biggest airbase of Pakistan. Also, their Top Gun school, or where all their pilots train, that also that airbase was also targeted. Even like Skardu, which is in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, we hit targets there. And even I think all there's a air defense station even down in Karachi. So if you look at the breadth of Pakistan, we hit everything from Pakistan occupied Kashmir, from Skardu all the way down to Karachi in the Sindh, which is so the entire length and breadth of Pakistan was hit in this airstrike.
Thank you, Mohal. So that was quite comprehensive, a detailing of what happened in on the two days. Now, mind you, on day one, India had met its military objective or the political objective. What was the political objective? Was to hit the terror launchpad, hit the terror HQ, and send out a clear message that we will hit you anywhere that we wish to, and there is no place in Pakistan where you can hide. However, once Pakistani retaliated, India now had to come up with a new military objective. And this military objective was purely containing and defending itself. Now, that is why you see that Pakistan Air Force bases, radar installations were all hit purely in a defensive tactic from India. Now, at this stage, Pakistan's Army Chief Asim Munir called up US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now, the Pakistanis were pretty much in panic at that moment. They called the Americans. Americans then informed the Indians that Pakistanis wanted to de escalate. Now, just before all this had panned out, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, in an interview, had indicated that it was none of their business to interrupt or to mediate or to get in the fight between India and Pakistan. So, U.S. was quite clear up until that stage. However, once the escalation ladder was getting breached almost every 4 to 5 hours, and the Pakistanis had called the Americans in panic. That was when Americans had no option but to ring up the Indians also and tell that, hey, you know what, the Pakistanis are are uh, are wishing to have a de-escalatory ramp or an exit ramp, as they would want to call it, so that this can all be brought to an end. Now, Indians responded saying that, hey, we can, I mean, once they indicate that they wish to stop fighting, then we are okay with it. We have anyway met our political and military objective. So, Indians responded. This was at the DGMO level talk. Now, what happened was on May 10th at around 12 noon, Pakistan's DGMO had called up India's DGMO. Indian DGMO was not available to take up the call. So the Pakistani DGMO was told to call back. They called up again at around 3:30, 3:35 p.m. And then he said that if you want a ceasefire, now the Indian DGMO said you cannot use the word ceasefire because that has legal implications. Why? Because a ceasefire would indicate that you were already in a state of war, and India had never declared that they were at war. And again, as I indicated at the beginning, Indians continued to use the term operation. So that is why they agreed that we will stop fighting. We will not use the official word ceasefire. So anyway, both parties agreed that by 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time, Pakistan will stop all firing. Indians also indicated that they would also stop. Now, by this time, around 8 airfields were immediately attacked. 2, 3 were attacked later, post 1 p.m., which was the initial DGMO call. So the Pakistanis wanted to be the last one to hit. It was almost like they wanted to be the last person talking in an argument.
Yeah, and then
And
also, like, sorry to interrupt, but I think there was a report in the New York Times where on 9th, supposedly JD Vance. Actually, before that, let me step back. So I
Mhm,
think in the initially, like when India was bombing terrorist sites in Pakistan, I think the US folks were not too worried about it.
correct.
In the last round of escalation on the 10th, when missiles started flying and military bases were being taken out, that's, I think, the concern level in Washington did go up. So again, back to the May 9th, I think there was a report where I think US Vice President JD Vance called Prime Minister Modi, as per the New York Times report, and said that Pakistan was looking for an honorable off ramp.
Mm.
But I think Modi was not in mood to give any off ramp as per the Indian sources. So, and then, like, because, like, and then you knew that something big was being, like, planned by the Pakistani, So I think Indians uh, did not, like, uh, take the off ramp then, because they knew that like Pakistan would be retaliating anyways. So the next day, the Pakistani airfields were hit, and I think that's when a lot of these back channel talks, probably from the US side, started happening. And I think the Pakistanis were told that basically you have to go, and then you got to go to the DGMO. So the DGMO, for listeners who don't know, is like Director General of Military Operations. So interestingly, every Tuesday, no matter like whether it's war or peace, the DGMO of Pakistan and the DGMO in India, they do talk. Kishore, back to you. Sorry.
Yeah, they have a hotline, so all
Yeah.
communication happens through that hotline.
Hmm.
Okay, so uh, what had happened or what had transcribed prior to this was that Sargodha was hit, as Mohal you pointed out. Now, DGMO had also spoken with the Chief of Army Staff, and the matter went to the NSA. Now, Kirana was hit, so that was a big news internally. Now, apparently, now that all of you know, there are reports that Kirana was a storage facility for all nuclear weapons, with
Allegedly. I mean,
alleged.
nobody knows. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is what is going on in social media. Now, Pakistanis have not acknowledged, Indians have even denied hitting Kirana. So there is again a lot of incomplete information there. But anyway, now again, Kirana was not even in the original list of targets. But somehow, somebody thought, why not do the right thing of taking that down? Now, why is this important? Is that Indians militarily, I think they were always 2 steps ahead of what the Pakistanis were thinking. Now, Indians thought that Pakistanis might want to use their Air Force jets, and Indians went ahead and destroyed the runways, the radar stations, so on and so forth. This would obviously blunt the air attack coming in from Pakistan. Next step was Indians thought that the Pakistanis might want to use their nuke weapons. And again here Indians were 2 steps ahead. They went and bombed the entrance to the facility where these were allegedly stored.
Yeah, but I mean, I still think that is more of a red herring, and I don't think Pakistanis were ever close to the nuclear, because even the reports, they said that the nuclear command authority, which holds the final say in these things, was they never had a meeting. So I think at this point, Pakistanis were pummeled quite a bit in on their air bases, and they knew that more strikes were coming, because like the initial strike was just on 8, and then 2 3 were attacked later in the afternoon. So as the afternoon wore on, I think more and more strikes were incoming, and I think at that point they started like waving the white flag, probably saying that, like, we will cease operations, because they didn't
Mm.
want to take any more beating. And I mean, a lot of their air bases were under attack, and some of the runways were out of commission. So I mean, they could have repaired the runways, but if your planes can't get in the air, then like, you could have more damage incoming. You can't respond to the Indian attack, is what I mean.
Correct,
Kishore.
correct, correct, of course. Now, on that day, there were reports coming in from Pakistan that Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif had called for a meeting of, I think it was, I don't know what's the official term that they use, but it was some kind of a uh, cabinet committee for nuclear security.
The nuclear command authority
Right,
meeting.
thank you. So
Yeah, yeah.
there were reports in the initial part of the day. Later, folks started denying that such a
Hmm.
meeting was ever called. So I think in during the operations during the time of war, all this information keeps coming in, and as an adversary, you will have to be on your toes. You will have to always be 2 steps ahead of what is happening.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, we'll always get to know the accurate information only when somebody writes their autobiography. So until then, we'll have to
Hmm.
stick with whatever is available in the public domain. Anyway, we'll continue moving on. Now, funny part was that the ceasefire was agreed at lightning speed. Now, Director General of Air Operations was notified that we had taken out Bolari. Now, again, uh, so essentially, both India and Pakistan had reached the edge of precipice, and then somehow, luckily, both of them, good sense prevailed, and both of them spoke to each other, and eventually, all firing stopped. Now, even there was drama. Pakistanis continued firing drones into Indian airspace, targeting Jammu, targeting Pathankot, even after the 5 p.m. deadline.
And
Now,
artillery shelling.
and artillery shelling across the line of control, and yeah, across the line of control. Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah sitting in Jammu was tweeting that this is some kind of a joke, that Pakistanis are continuing to bombard us. Now, while all this was happening and the Indian media was showing live footage, pretty much deferred live, Pakistanis kept denying, and in fact, they were telling that Indians who were actually retaliating at that point in time were actually the ones who were violating the ceasefire agreement. So Pakistanis kept lying through their teeth even after the ceasefire was breached by them, and this gave a fair idea of. I mean, people were worried that are we going to see the ceasefire being broken by Pakistanis. There were jokes on Twitter that day that the Trump who had uh, gone public telling he was responsible for the ceasefire, people were joking and congratulating him for having brokered a ceasefire, which on paper lasted for only about 2.5 hours. So that was the kind of drama that happened. Mind you, now we all are past it and we can have a quiet laugh about it. But that day things were pretty hot, and people were all tensed. Now, anyway, we'll move on. And Mohal, you want to talk about the air defense? I think
Yeah.
our listeners would want to definitely hear about
Yeah.
Indian air defense.
Yeah, so I think one of the underrated parts, and even like many in India are surprised by the efficacy of the Indian air defense system. So it is like a multi-layered system. I know like many of us might be aware of like names like Akash or MRSAM, like most of the listeners have probably not even heard of them. I mean, the S400 is probably the most well-known system, but I think as per reports, maybe it was fired none at all as per Shivaru's reporting, or maybe once as per some reports I could find on social media. So it's a multi-layered defense that addresses threats across different altitudes and ranges. So the inner layer, like the most front facing layer, is basically we have like for short range and low altitude targets such as drones. So platforms like Legacy, Bofors L-70 guns, ZSU-23 Shilka, manpads basically are the shoulder fired like missiles that you throw at them. And we have counter or CUAS, which is counter unmanned aerial systems. So that's the outer layer. And I think in the events of 8th
You
and ninth,
meant
I think
you meant
most,
the inner layer.
yeah, sorry, the inner layer. I mean the inner layer, by when I say outer layer, I mean the outermost layer facing the border. So the
Hmm.
innermost layer is basically for I think, and most of the interceptions over this 3 day conflict was done by these systems. The second layer is basically your short range surface to air missile. So basically we have the Israeli Spider, we have the uh, Pachora, the OSA, AK, like a lot of these systems. The middle tier, it would be the medium range SAMs. Like, I mean, Akash does have a range of 25 kilometers. Like some people say it's 40, and then there's the Akash next generation or NG, which is supposed to be like 75 to even 100 kilometers, depend on what report you think. But Akash, I think it's like one of the old war horses of the Indian air
Hmm.
defense system. So this was part of the original, and like let me get the acronym right. I think integrated IGMDP, right? Integrated, no, Indigenous Guided Missile Development Program, which was started in the 80s, like this is like probably 40 years ago. And I think one of the heads was our late president, Abdul Kalam, correct?
Right,
That was the I think the program has matured quite a bit, and Akash has been one of the five programs. I mean, obviously we had the Prithvi and the Agni, like the surface to surface ballistic missiles. I think that was one of the Akash has been like has been one of the stellar performers in this round of engagement, and is a completely indigenous system, mind you. So the other one is like the Israeli MR SAM, and the outer layer or the last layer would be your S-400 Triumph air defense system, which is like imported from Russia. So basically, like this is like how the systems work. So let's go into all of them one by one. So first, we'll talk about the L-70. Now these were like I mean, if you see in the old movies, like maybe even the 60s wars or even the World War II, you have those defense ACAC guns, as we say, like they just continuously fire round after round into the air to bring down airplanes. But at that time, they were like much smaller planes. We didn't have supersonic planes and stuff like that, so they were kind of used the first line of defense. Now, eventually they fell out of favor, but now recently in the last few years, interestingly, they were upgraded with electrical and optical sensors and auto tracking systems to use against drones. Because I think in the last, I would say nine-ish, not nine, sorry. Let's say 2018-19 is when we started first hearing about these drones and drone swarms. So this has been repurposed. I mean, this is like the complete Indian jugaad, if you say, like, right? You never throw any crap out, right? I mean, you trash out. We always recycle it and use it for something else. So, I mean, this might be a too harsh of a term for the Bofors L-70 gun, but we just repurposed it to hit drones and drone swarms. Now, this gun can hit fire 2 to 300 rounds up to 4 kilometers. So it's a frontline defense. The next is the ZSU 23 Shilka. Now this is like a tracked platform which uses 423 guns, and it can it is same. It has been upgraded with fire control and fuse based rounds to counter drone incursions. And I think it can fire like a few thousand rounds up to them. Next is the homegrown Akash system developed by DRDO. Is a medium-range mobile surface to designed to neutralize threats such as jets, drones. Mind you, but drones are not its primary target. Cruise missiles and air-to-surface missiles. And Akash, like it is like a supersonic. It can go maintain supersonic speeds. It is a ramjet rocket engine, so it can go to up to Mach 2.5 and take down targets from, I think it's like 25 to 45 kilometers, and altitudes as high as 20 kilometers. Next, we have the MRSAM. It's jointly developed by India and Israel. It's also called Barakat. I think the Indian Navy had a version of it where they call it the LRSAM. But now, since we are going to develop indigenously more advanced rockets than these, we just renamed it MRSAM. And then not only the Navy ships have it, some of the destroyers, but also now uh, the air defenses of India, they carry the MR7. I think the interception of the Fatah 1 and 2 missiles over Sirsa in Haryana, as per reports, I think was done by the MR-SAM. So
Right.
technically, we didn't even go to the last layer of the S-400. It was intercepted. And that's where I think the beauty of the multi-layered system is, like, depending on the altitude, the target, the profile, the speed, you can choose which missile to take down an incoming threat. And lastly, but not least, we have the S-400, which can engage almost all types of modern warplanes. It can detect targets up to 600 kilometers away and even has range of taking down targets like up to 400 kilometers. So this is like the crown jewel of the Indian air defense system, which is like the last layer. And also we also have the ballistic missile sheet, though it might not be active, so we won't go into details in the for this podcast. So these are the various systems. And then the another thing which has been quite proven its metal in this air war for the last not for the last, but in these 3 days of battle, was the IACCS system. So it's the integrated air command and control system. So basically it's a command and control infrastructure developed by the Indian Air Force. So it brings together various data streams and assets from radars, fighters, unmanned systems, surveillance platforms, to bring a live and comprehensive picture of what the airspace around India looks like. So it takes feeds from everything from like early warning platforms like AVAX, UAV, airbase, civil aviation, observation posts. So this is very critical to create a whole a picture of, like, because in the target, not only you need to detect it, but also you need to track it, like where it's going, and also eventually if it's a threat, you have to neutralize it. So it takes care of I mean, provides data and feedback for all of these. And one of the other innovations was, now the IACCS is completely an air force system. However, in the last few years, and this many people might not know, even the army has an air defense wing. So the army air defense wing also got its system, which was developed by Bharat Electronics Limited, or BEL. It's called Akash Tir, and I think many of you might have read articles on how the Akash Tir system works. So the Akash Tir is the army equivalent of the IACCS of the Indian Air Force, and both have been cross also integrated with each other, so they can provide feedback to each other. So there is now seamless coordination between the army and the air force regarding the air picture over India, which can detect, track, and help neutralize all these targets. And I think uh, one of the good things was that, uh, but mind you, like, why, I think some of the questions have come up, that why do we use those anti-aircraft guns like the Bofors L-70, the the ZSU 23s. So one of the things is, like, many of these cheap drones, they're very small in size. Now, how you detect a enemy threat is through a radar cross section. So usually when an object, it reflects some of the radio energy back to the radar, it can pick it up as long as it's a big image. I mean, I know stealth does try to hide its radar cross section and stuff, which makes it like very, very small, not invisible, but very, very small. So many of these drones are hard to detect, especially when you have a drone swarm coming at you. So because the cross section is so small, the radar can't pick it up. So the best solution is to have electro optical sensors, and many of these air defense guns have been fitted with electro optical sensors which can detect these threats and they can fire like let's say a few hundred to 1,000 rounds in a wide field of fire to neutralize this thing. So even the smaller threats which are not detected by like the radar are detected by the by the electro-optical systems, and they were able to neutralize these targets over the 3 days of conflict. Now, interestingly, I think the Ministry of Defense had said that Pakistani drones were neutralized by not only these missiles, like a hit to kill thing, uh, guns and stuff, but also something called as counter unmanned aircraft systems, or CUAS. So these are comprehensive defense mechanisms which can track, identify, neutralize unauthorized drones. So what this thing is, they use a lot of different techniques, including uh, um they use signal jamming, GPS spoofing, or even kinetic interceptors like lasers and stuff to bring down these drones. So you don't always need to shoot at a drone to take it down, but you can use this because many times these drones, they have a data link going back to their operator, right? So if you can jam the link, maybe the drone loses connectivity and it might just fall on the ground or like crash because it won't have any, it cannot be guided any further. Let's say if it was a drone operator operating it. So there are these many systems like signal jamming, GPS spoofing, kinetic, and then also interestingly, I mean, in like India also like had Garud commandos, which are like Air Force commandos. They use sniper rifles to take down some of the drones. So it's like the most Indian thing that you are using uh, sniper rifles to take down drones. And I think this also shows that the difference between the Indian and the Pakistani air defense was kind of almost toothless, and like
Hmm.
we had drones taking down like air defense systems in Lahore or all these military bases attack, and hardly anything got intercepted. While India, which has like a 3,323 kilometer long border with Pakistan, it's a no mean feat that they were able to cover such a longer border and intercept drones in various states all across the border. I mean, mind you, like people talk about the much talked about Iron Dome system in um,
Israel?
Israel, sorry. Yeah, thank you. So like they only have like I mean, if you take all of Israel's border, it might just be 1,000 kilometers combined, but they also don't have threats. Like they have a Mediterranean Sea and they have like borders with Egypt. They're not war with. Anyways, so the thing is that their threats are over a much shorter period. Like Gaza border is just 60 kilometers, and they still have great pains to intercept all those missiles fired from Gaza. So the Indian system also has come of age, the air defense system, and has a spectacular performance uh, in the last few days. Kishore?
Okay, yeah. So thank you. That was quite comprehensive. Again, people who are listening to us, uh, this time around, majority of our rockets that were fired were surface to air. Uh, or air to air at most. So essentially, we were trying to hit all these airborne targets. Now, we also have a repertoire of surface to surface and surface to submarine kind of rockets, but obviously they are in our repertoire, but they were not used. Now, however, the point that I wanted to make was because you had all these drones coming in, all these missiles coming in, there were a lot of debris falling within Indian heartland, in the Hindi heartland, in Punjab, so on and so forth. And people who thought that who always had the conventional warfare in mind, they started thinking that, oh, a fighter jet went down, we saw a fuselage come down, we saw some other debris, a fuel tank come down. So there was a lot of confusion initially, thinking that these were employed, there was a dogfight, so on and so forth. Now, Indian armed forces, they had to go to great lengths to deny all these claims, and every time there was a debris falling, the Indian authorities had to quickly go scoot,
Mhm.
try to grab them back, and also try to
Yeah,
do
I
some
think
kind
there
of
has been a
reverse engineering and so on and so forth. Mohal?
yeah, I mean there was a lot of secrecy also in the first day. I mean, like fuel tanks in Kashmir were identified as a fallen debris, but there
Oh
have been
no.
reports that at least like one jet might have crashed in like Batinda in Punjab. Now, uh, in the press briefings by the Indian Air Force, they have denied that any of the pilots have been captured or killed. Like, I mean, Pakistan had some reports that they had captured Indian pilots, but Indian pilots never crossed the border. So, like, even if their planes were shot down, they would be well inside Indian territory. So
Correct.
they said all the pilots were safe. But regarding the losses, like, yeah, the DG Air Ops had a very diplomatic answer, not confirming or denying that India had any air losses. So if there are, maybe they will reveal them in the future. In the future, there are also reports that Pakistani aircraft were shot down within Indian territory, which would be interesting. And these were all the exchange on the first day itself. I
Right.
think as the days went on, the Pakistani capability degraded to mount serious air ops. So maybe there might have been, I think in the due course of time we will know, but I think there's been a lot of speculation. I mean, Pakistan went overboard, like saying like there are like 5 or 6 losses. And like I mean, like who was that journalist? He was just increasing the count by one Indian airplane every few hours. Like I forget,
Uh,
like
Chima, the Pakistani
no, no,
Chima.
no, not Chima. I think the other. But anyways, I can't remember his name. But the thing was, he was just increasing the count. But anyways, I think in due course of time, all these details will come out. One things cool down, and I think Indian Air Force will also try to, like, learn from the last lesson. Like from Balakot we had certain lessons, like from this air exchange we will learn, like, okay, what did we do good, what did we do bad, and we'll, like, I mean, modify for the next upcoming battle. Because I mean, the next war is obviously going to be different. Like nobody thought in 2019 that, I mean, they're going to have a drone swarm war. Anyways, so moving on, Kishore, there was a lot of this controversy in the media, and like a lot of conspiracy theories floating out on the whether a nuclear facility was hit in Kirana Hills. So, do you want to take that up?
Yeah, I think we got to talk about how. I'll just take a step back, Mohal. We have to talk about how Indian and the Pakistanis have kept each other informed about the nuclear facilities that they have. And why do they share this information? For this exact reason that they don't want to inadvertently or accidentally hit those nuclear installations and facilities. So, Indian and the Pakistani have an agreement on prohibition of attack against nuclear installation and facilities. Now, this was signed on 31 December 1988 and entered into force on 27 January 1991, providing inter alia that India and Pakistan inform each other of the nuclear installation and facilities to be covered under that agreement on the 1st of January of every calendar year.
Hmm.
And 34th consecutive exchange of this kind of a list between these two countries. First one having taken place
Hmm.
on January 1, 1992. Now,
Hmm. No,
this
I
is
mean, and
this
then.
is in terms of the foundational agreement that they have in place.
Mhm,
Mohal?
mhm. Yeah, I think, and then interestingly, the DG Air Ops for India, like he had a very interesting answer. So when somebody asked that, hey, did you hit a nuclear facility? He said, oh, thank you for telling us,
Thank
like it
you.
was a
Yeah.
nuclear facility.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he didn't, I mean, deny it, but I mean, basically, I don't think India would be actively targeting any nuclear facility because it's a very escalatory step. And like, I mean, what if Pakistan starts using nukes? Because the thing is, when you are attacking other guys' nuke sites, he might think that, oh, if I don't use it, then I lose the chance to use the nuclear weapons. I mean, my chance is right now. So if you're truly hitting a nuclear site, then you would not want to do a token strike on some random site. You would want to probably take out every, and that's what called a first strike. I mean, anyways, India has a no first use policy, which is a different thing. But I mean, what if, like, I mean, but nobody has been able to answer. I'm also trying to dig up this question: is Kirana Hills on this list that we exchange on January 1st of every year? I mean, for example, on January 1st, 2025, was Kirana Hills not part of it? Now, there is still something. I don't want to start a conspiracy, but like, what if Kirana Hills was not on the list, but it was hit because we knew that Pakistan was doing something there nuclear related, but like maybe they didn't put on a list. So I mean, you could have like a million. I mean, there was also this controversy that, oh, boron was shipped from Egypt because they wanted boron was like to reduce the impact of radiation and stuff. And I think there's a lot of conspiracies, and even there were like few earthquakes in that region. Obviously, it was not in Kirana Hills, but I mean, mind you, those earthquakes are like 10 kilometers depth or like much larger. And then even if you take it into the Indian nuclear test, I mean, we don't dig a shaft 10 kilometers into the ground and like do a nuclear explosion, right? First of all, the seismic signature would have been picked up by a lot of people. There's a lot of nuclear monitoring for like such rogue nuclear explosions, right? So, I mean, for example, the shaft that we dug in like Pokhran 2 was just 750 meters, which is not even a kilometer. So it would be a very shallow earthquake, and someone would have picked it up across the US, you know. So,
Yeah.
Kishore.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's about it. There are continuing reports of a possible leak or all that nature, but again, as you informed,
But no confirmed reports, right? That's the
of
thing.
course, yeah,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
you
yeah.
informed, these are just mere claim, and none of
I
them
think
are
the war is over,
confirmed.
so social media is having a day with the nuclear story, you know that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, okay. So we'll continue moving on, and we'll also talk about rare admission of involvement in the Pulwama terror attack. Now, as we all remember, Pulwama terror attack was killing of 40 paramilitary personnel in Pulwama in 2019. Now, these were CRPF Jawans who were being moved from one place in J&K to another. Now, it was a rare admission of Air Vice Marshal Aurangzeb Ahmad during a press conference in Pakistan. Now, he is also the Director General of Public Relations for the Pakistani Air Force. Now, I will quote him. Um, Pulwama terror attack was a tactical brilliance of the Pakistani military. Now, obviously, they had denied about any involvement for all these years, 5 years. And now, this time around, in front of dozens of media personnel, including foreign correspondents, he said, we tried to tell them with our tactical brilliance in Pulwama, unquote. Now, obviously, this was indicative that they were involved. Now, similarly, they may, after 4, 5, 6 years, again in a rare admission, they might admit that they were the ones who planned and were involved in the Pahalgam terror attack.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I thought this was quite significant, so wanted to bring it in. Now, we should also talk about how PM Modi responded or remarked about the Operation Sindoor. And I'll just quickly list down a few points from his speech at 8 p.m. that he spoke with all the countrymen. Now he said, I mean, first of all, he saluted all the soldiers, engineers, spies, and all the other paramilitary staff, thanking them on behalf of all the countrymen. Now, also he said that in Pakistan, terror camps and training centers were attacked, and terrorists would never have thought that India could do this to them. So, PM Modi was quite categorical in pointing all the blame on Pakistan. Now, additionally, he said that the nation was united and that they had a mantra of nation first. Now, surprisingly, he also drew parallel to 9/11, London tube bombing, multiple terror attacks in India, and he said that in all these cases, terror emanated from Pakistan. So he was trying to bring in a point that Pakistan was a global epicenter of terror. And he also said that India had now uprooted these terror centers and had killed more than 100 such dreaded terrorists. Pakistan, Modi continued, Pakistan chose to attack us back instead of supporting us in our fight against terror. He also said that Pakistan attacked civilian houses and places of worship and spectacularly failed. He also pointed out that Pakistan's drones and missiles were a total failure. And now, towards the last part of his speech, he said that we had temporarily paused or stopped, and Pakistan was now put on probation, and that the forces would continue to remain on high alert. Operation Sindoor, he added, was the new policy against terrorism, and this was our new red line or our new normal. Nuclear blackmail, he continued, he added, was that nuclear blackmail will definitely not work with us. He also said that we will not differentiate between the terrorists and those who support those terrorists. This may not be the time for war, but at the same time, this is also not the time for terrorism. So, Mohal, we have covered this umpteen number of times in our earlier episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Modi indicating that Modi, in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war, telling that this is not the time for war. And now he added telling that this is also not the time for terrorism. Now, at the fag end of his speech, PM Modi also said, terror and talks cannot happen together, terror and trade cannot happen together. And in a pretty much veiled reference to what Bilawal Bhutto Sardari had mentioned in the Pakistani National Assembly, he said water and blood cannot flow together. And he kind of closed the speech telling talks with Pakistan will only be on the return of POK, the official term is POJK, and also on terrorism. So I think
Mm-hmm.
PM Modi made it quite clear what India's military and political objectives were, how they were met, how Pakistan, instead of choosing to support India on the fight against terror, had chosen to retaliate, had kind of used civilian flights as some kind of a shield, and how places of worship were attacked in India, all that. So I think this speech was quite invigorating, and all the right noises were made. Now, additionally, slowly details started emerging about the conditions for ceasefire that were set by India, and
And
I'll
then
quickly.
also, one wanted to point out one thing quickly. So I think for me, the most important statement was that the terror and the terror backers would be there'll be no differentiation. So,
Right.
like, I mean, every time we end up destroying like terrorist camps, but I mean eventually I think at some point in this round of provocations we're going to round off terrorist camps to bomb, so eventually it will have to be strikes at military. And I think this is something at least I'm reading between the lines, that next time even military's kind of bases are fair or military targets are fair game if they're continuing, because at some point I think even Modi realizes that you cannot just bomb, like I mean there's only limited amount of targets, because I mean many of them might be in dense civilian populations. So I think eventually it might be a much larger escalation come next time. Kishore.
Correct, correct. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so in terms of conditions for ceasefire, the Indus Water Treaty will continue to be kept in abeyance. Trade will not resume. Trade is now completely halted between India and Pakistan. Indian airspace will continue to remain closed for all Pakistani flights. Pakistani artists will continue to be banned in India. Pakistani nationals will not be provided visa to visit India, and the existing visa will stand cancelled. So I think all these steps were taken by the Indian government prior to Operation Sindoor, and these will continue to remain firmly without any changes. Now, I think we'll quickly move on. We'll talk about the global reactions on the ceasefire, and will how can we not talk about U.S. President Trump? Now, Trump kind of stole the limelight, and he said that uh, he was he was responsible for getting these two people to talk, and he said that he was happy that India and Pakistan used common sense, wisdom to stop fighting. Great countries. I will discuss having more trade with them, so on and so forth. And eventually, he kind of gave feeling that he was purely responsible for the mediation. Now, Pakistanis were happy about this. They lapped it up completely. They thanked Trump profusely for his role. Indians were not a bit amused by Trump's statement, so much that in not even one of India's official statements did India thank Trump for his role in mediation. This
I mean, he
implied
kind
that.
of, sorry, I interrupt, but he kind of jumped the gun because I think before India's foreign secretary made the announcement, he kind of tweeted about it, and that's where I think a lot of the confusion occurred as to like who uh, was able to bring about peace. Sorry, Kishore, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So I think, yes, you were right. Now, not only that, also Indians were miffed, uh, saying that, hey, we didn't even ask you to become a mediator. So why are you claiming to the world that you mediated? So A, you were not asked for any mediation. B, you are falsely claiming credit where credit was not due. So I think, yeah. India did not see Trump as initiator of peace. Now, as Pakistanis, the common people of Pakistan realize that the armed forces and the government ran a propaganda based on lies and deceit that they had won this war against India, the greatest challenge to their general Asim Munir will come from Imran Khan's Tehreek-e-Insaf party. Why? Because PMLN, Nawaz Sharif party, Shahbaz Sharif party, is firmly on Asim Munir's side. Even PPP, Pakistan People's Party, led by Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, even they are on Asim Munir's side. The only party that is questioning Asim Munir is Imran Khan's Tehreek-e-Insaf party. And India will need to be prepared for all eventualities here. And to avoid or overcome all this, Pakistani army might want to carry out an even bigger terror attack against India, and this time it may not even be in J&K. It might be somewhere in the heart of the country. Now, why is this being talked about? Is that Asim Munir this time around will hope that this kind of a new attack on India will kind of force India to wage another war. And Asim Munir would not only want to use that as a golden opportunity to set himself firmly in the chair, but also want to use that as another chance at a redemption. So I think that way, Pakistanis would want to get even at India. Now, we'll talk about other political ramifications a little later, but Mohal, you have any other concluding remarks?
Yeah, I think, and this is like something I tweeted also about on the like day of the uh, cessation of hostilities, as they say. Basically, the goal, India's goal from day one was to neutralize the terror infrastructure inside Pakistan. Basically, we took out those 9 targets that were bombed in the early hours of May 7th. Interestingly, in the one of the press briefings, they had a list of 21 sites, and I said, like, why would you show 21 sites when you're bombing 9 sites? Are the other 12 sites next in
Mm.
line? And why
Correct.
would you even tell the enemy about it? So it was kind of a, I don't know, like subliminal messaging or like passive aggressive, whatever you call it. Anyways, so
I thought that Indians wanted to keep the Pakistanis guessing.
yeah. Yeah, on tenterhooks. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Anyways, so coming back to my thought, like if you, so basically, if you look at close at the press briefings held by Indian on multiple days, the message was constantly like, hey, I mean, and I'm paraphrasing it here, de-escalate and we will not pursue any further military action. But however, Pakistani chose to harass and provoke India with swarm drone attacks, cross-border artillery shelling, infiltration attempts, which forced India in to respond in kind, like I mean, also in missile attacks. Sorry, how can I forget that one? Which forced Pakistan to respond by taking out their air defense assets well inside Pakistan. Now, early morning on May 10th, when the attempted Fatah 1 missile strike on NCR, basically it's like the heart of India,
Mm.
forced India's hand to go up the escalation ladder as not doing would be sign of weakness. So in retaliation, like around a dozen of Pakistan Air Force bases and a couple of radar installations all over Pakistan were bombed. I mean, they were not completely destroyed, but they were like kind of to send a message that we can do much more if you want to. Now, once Pakistan asked for a cessation in hostilities by the DGMO, I mean, India basically we got the off ramp that we were always looking from day one in the conflict, but it wasn't like India was actively looking to escalate the. But if the it came and which did come on the 10th, it was always ready to do this. So I think this shows the one importance of having clear cut goals in any military operation and conflicts. I mean, we can just see from like a never ending conflict, like the special military option that Russia has been running. It's still ongoing for 2.5 years. It's bogged down Russia with sanctions, dragged down Russia economically, and like people are hurting. Even like the Israel's war in Gaza, it's like a never-ending operation. So some of these operations are kind of tricky, even though there might be a lot of lusting for blood from the Indian side for this heinous attack in Pahalgam. Now, even if we go back to the Indian history, like years ago, or let's say around 4 years ago, in like after in Op Parakram, basically, after it ended, like people asked like Prime Minister, then former Prime Minister, sorry, former Prime Minister, but then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, that why did we not go to war with Pakistan even after we had done a full mobilization? So Vajpayee said like everybody knew how to start a war, but nobody would give him an answer on how the war would end. So in absence of clear cut goals, it's not like you just start a war, but then you getting bogged down in a quagmire. And for India, the main goal is to grow economically and become the third largest economy, a great military power, with soft power, all kinds of stuff. So I think this shows that like having the clear cut goals was a good aim that what happened. Now, the other thing which I think in my calculated remark I'll say is basically since Pakistan and India went overtly nuclear in the 98, Pakistan always has held the nuclear umbrella that, hey, if you do anything, we'll just use nuclear weapons. And I think it
Yeah.
has stopped India on many a time from pursuing any conventional attack in response to terror attacks. And I think it has used this. It has lost wars in like 65, 71, and even 99 Kargil. So I think it has learned the hard way that conventional superiority rests with India and it cannot beat India. So it does this subconventional thing of terrorism. So it used to do this subconventional war. And if India was going to respond, it would threaten all out nuclear war. Even like right now, they have loose nuclear talk from all of the leaders. But now, so we had these two levels like subconventional war and all out nuclear attack. I think what India has successfully done is it has carved out a space between the threshold of all out nuclear war and below the subconventional war where you can climb the escalatory ladder without going to the nuclear. I think that the bogey of the nuclear war or nuclear weapons being used has been removed. India does have a no first use policy, but it basically we have promised massive retaliation. So
Mhm.
Pakistan knows that. Many people, I forget who said that Pakistan, I think Vajpayee said that like Pakistan, if they use nuclear weapons, it will cease to exist tomorrow.
Right.
So, so I think that bogey has been called out, and I don't think uh, people fear that as much as the obviously with Pakistan being irrational, there is never a 0% chance of nuclear war, but it's much lower than what it used to be. So I think successfully carving out gives that you can still punish Pakistan to a certain extent without going to all out nuclear war. And I think, let's say if you give an example, let's say if somebody is bothering you, and then if you're about to retaliate against them, that, you might say, oh, I'll throw a grenade at you and you will be dead. I might be also injured a little, but I'll throw grenade. It's kind of a similar example. But that now maybe you can pinch him, you can throw a punch, you can kick him something. It doesn't mean that he will always throw grenade. He might threaten to throw grenade, but you can still get back at him at some levels which are above the maximum level. I think that's would be a thing. I think another thing that I just heard about was I think today in the news, and today we're recording on the morning of 17th May in India. I think there was a news article that what happens to the defense budget. I think there was a report that 50,000 crore was more going to be allocated to the defense budget, which is very welcome news. And we have been saying like that we need more, way more defense. As a percentage of government expenditure, I don't take look at the GDP stuff because everything depends on the budget. Like the percentage of GDP numbers, I don't consider it as important. But anyways, so the percentage of defense expenditure as a central government, when Prime Minister Modi came to office, it was like around 16-17%, but now it's fallen to like 13-14% post COVID. Obviously we had a lot of welfare schemes, but I think government needs to bring it up to like that 16-17%. Maybe this might bring it up maybe above 14-15%, but still I think we are way short of what the defense forces need. Anything Another thing, interesting thing, what I heard from few veterans, military veterans, was that like we might have to be prepared. Like every time we are waiting 10, 11, or 14 days for the round of escalation, many times Pakistan gets chance to prepare. But what if we need to have in a higher mode of preparedness for the like a cold start strategy that came about after of Parakram, that you need to be ready to go in, let's say, 2 or 3 days. I mean, this is all speculation on the for the moment, but that might involve more cost, more preparedness, more cost to being more ready than before, more forward deployment. So those are like all open-ended questions. Like, I mean, also a terrorist attack. I mean, unfortunately 26 people died. What if like 5 people died in a terrorist attack? Will that invite a military response from India? Nobody knows all these questions, right? So there are a lot of open, and I mean, think we should not delineate such a policy that okay, only if certain number of people die we do a military strike on Pakistan. I mean, next time if let's say all these military headquarters have been demolished, what do we strike? There's no there are no civilian targets, right? Do we hit military bases? So I think in the few days and months ahead, there are a million questions in terms of defense preparedness, defense budget. What will be the next round of targets? What is the policy? What happens to the Indus Water Treaty? All these sanctions, closing of air routes. So it's going to be like I think the best way is not to like militarily demolish Pakistan, but I think we have said on this earlier podcast, it's to slowly strangle Pakistan economically, so it comes to its senses that cross-border terrorism is not going to get it anywhere. Kishore?
Great. Thank you, Mohal. Now, apart from the military dimension, we also need to look at the political dimension, and that happens to be my concluding remark today. Now, obviously, we have seen how uh, India and Pakistan went on a propaganda overdrive or went on a narrative overdrive. Pakistan chose the path of lying first and making sure that their life would reach out to every corner of the world. We now see how Pakistani journalists were the first ones to report on major media outlets, including Washington Post, New York Times, so on and so forth, coming out with obnoxious reports that Indian jets were hit or the Indian power grid was taken out, so on and so forth. So obviously the narrative war will continue. India will have to be on top of its game when it comes to always being two steps ahead, even in the media war. Now, apart from media, I think politically as well, India will need to will need to be two steps ahead. Now, obviously, there is a FATF plenary session coming up in June, so India will go with all documents prepared to ask for a ban on Lashkar-e-Taiba, putting Pakistan itself on grey list. I think all that will happen. We don't need to doubt that. Now, more importantly, Indian government, as per latest reports, is that Indian government will send out expedition of members of parliament to various world capitals. And this time it will include opposition MPs as well, including Asaduddin Owaisi of MIM, Shashi Tharoor of Congress, and in each expedition you will have one member from Ministry of External Affairs accompanying them. So I think that way India will be on an overdrive trying to prove its point in all world capitals. More importantly, I think India will also look at how, who, and why did the world capital respond during Operation Sindoor. Now, obviously, Quad is some kind of grouping, a loose grouping of these four countries: USA, Australia, India, Japan, and we did not even hear a semblance of condemnation coming in from Quad. Now, obviously, why do you need a Quad when you cannot even come to your own constituent members' support when it is in the middle of hugely escalatory conflict? Now, obviously, India will ask these questions to all Quad members, India will again go to US and tell that do not try to link everything with trade tariff talks. Keep terror and trade separate. Your FTA will happen as and when it should happen, but I want you to support me in my fight against terror. So I think that way India will continue to be on a political overdrive. Um, Additionally, I think India would also want to call the bluff on countries which are supportive of Pakistan, China and Turkey, for example. Now, Turkey provides all the drones to Pakistan, and Pakistan used most of those drones in the conflict. So obviously there was this huge public outrage on how Celebi, aviation firm from Turkey, is employed in Indian airports, multiple Indian airports, and India was quick to revoke security clearance on this. Now, obviously, there are reports that Turkey tourism operators are now kind of requesting that Indians should come down for tourism into Turkey. So obviously, Turkey, Azerbaijan will be targeted by India, telling, hey, you know what, if you're on their side, then you may not get any trade from us or any other dealings from us. So I think that way, India will continue to be on a political and a diplomatic overdrive. I think that that is something that we need to be watching out for in the weeks and months ahead. Mohal, anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think you pretty much well covered. It will be interesting to see with this new normal established and the new paradigm. And for the first time in 50 years, India has attacked military sites in
Hmm.
Pakistan. I think more than the events on May 7th, the events on May 10th are more significant for me. Like actual Pakistan military installations were hit, and even Prime Minister said that terror and terror enablers will not be differentiated. Kishore.
Yep. Thank you, Mohal. And we'll wrap it up there. That, dear listener, wraps up today's episode where we spoke about Operation Sindoor, how it was carried out, and how it panned out, how it climbed the escalatory ladder, and how eventually it all came to an end. To continue hearing about such interesting topics, do subscribe to our channel India Rising wherever you are listening to us. We would also like to hear from you if you have any suggestions on any topics that you would like us to cover. Do remember that these topics should be directly related to India's foreign policy. Until the next episode, this is Mohal and Kishor signing off.